Claire liked places that made other. The digital clock on my nightstand turned from 3:16 to 3:17, and a second later I heard the front door open. Not loud, just slow enough to tell me Megan was trying not to make a sound. I was already awake, flat on my back, staring at the dark ceiling with one arm over my eyes. I had been lying there for almost an hour, listening to the silence of the house, the hum of the air vent, the occasional headlights moving across our bedroom wall. When her heels clicked once against the hardwood downstairs, and then stopped, I knew she had taken them off by hand. That told me more than any apology ever could. A minute later, she came into the bedroom. Moonlight from the window caught the outline of her body, the slim black dress, the loose hair falling over one shoulder, the careful way she moved when she thought she was unobserved. She smelled like perfume, but not the one she kept on the tray in our bathroom. Megan wore jasmine and amber. This was sharper, colder, something with vanilla underneath it. Too sweet and too deliberate. I lowered my arm and looked at her. She froze for half a second, one hand still on the zipper at the back of her dress. "You're awake." It wasn't a question. I pushed myself up against the headboard and said nothing. My voice would have broken the stillness too early, and I wanted that silence to sit on her skin for a moment. I wanted her to feel what it was like when someone already knew. She exhaled through her nose like I was the inconvenience. Then she turned away, dropped her purse onto the chair in the corner, and started taking out her earrings as if she had come home from an ordinary dinner. "Don't start," she said. Just like that. No excuse. No fake smile. No rush lie about work friends, bad traffic, dead phone battery, or too much wine with clients. Just those two words flat and practiced, like she had been saving them. Don't start. I watched her in the mirror over the dresser. Calm, annoyed, almost bored. That was the part that hit hardest. Not that she came home at 3:17 in the morning, smelling like someone else's night. It was the fact that she wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. I looked at the pale line of her bare shoulder, the unfamiliar perfume hanging in the air between us, and felt something inside me go quiet. Not break, just go quiet. "Okay," I said. She glanced at me in the mirror then, finally paying attention, like that wasn't the answer she had prepared for. I lay back down, eyes open, while she stepped into the bathroom and shut the door. A few seconds later, I heard the water run. I didn't move, because somewhere between 3:17 and the sound of that faucet, I understood something with perfect clarity. This wasn't the beginning of anything. It was just the first time she stopped pretending. I didn't ask her anything the next morning. Megan stood in the kitchen in a loose gray sweater, barefoot on the tile, pouring coffee like nothing had shifted. Sunlight came to the window behind her, catching in her hair, soft and familiar. If someone walked in at that moment, they'd think we were fine. That was the illusion she relied on. "Want some?" she asked, holding up the carafe without turning around. I watched her for a second longer than necessary. "No." She shrugged, poured her own, and leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone, thumb moving fast. Too fast for someone just checking messages. She smiled once, small, private, and then the expression disappeared the moment she felt me looking. "Busy day?" I asked. "Meetings," she said immediately. "Late one, probably." "Of course." I nodded like I believed it and grabbed my keys. No argument, no tension, just routine. That seemed to relax her more than anything. That was the first thing I noticed. Relief, not guilt, not fear. Relief that I wasn't reacting. Over the next few days, I stopped listening to what she said and started watching what she did. Her phone never left her hand anymore. Bathroom, kitchen, even when she stepped out to take the trash. Face down on the table when she set it down every single time. Notifications muted. Screen brightness lowered at night. Small things, but small things repeat. Wednesday night. She said she was working late again. At 11:48 p.m., a rideshare notification lit up her iPad on the counter. Same account she'd forgotten was synced. Pickup location wasn't her office. It was 3 blocks away from a boutique hotel downtown. I didn't react. I just memorized it. Thursday morning, one of her bracelets was missing. Gold, thin, the one she wore almost every day. By Friday it was back, but she didn't wear it. It sat on the dresser, like it had just been placed there, not lived in. Rotations. Things leaving, things returning. Saturday, I opened the laundry basket and found a shirt I hadn't seen before. Not new, just unfamiliar. Different fabric, different smell. That same perfume from 317 lingering faintly in it, like it had soaked into threads. Not hers, not mine. I folded it anyway and left it where she'd find it. She didn't mention it. That was the second thing I noticed. Omission, not just lies, but the absence of things that should have been said. By the end of the week, the pattern wasn't suspicion anymore. It was structure, timed, repeated, comfortable, and that's when it settled in. This wasn't new. Not the late nights. Not the rides. Not the perfume. She hadn't gotten careless. She had gotten used to it. I stood in the hallway that night, watching her laugh softly at something on her phone, and understood something cold and precise. I hadn't just missed the beginning. I had been living in the middle of it for a long time. I didn't go through her phone. That would have been too obvious. Too temporary. Phones get wiped, replaced, lost. Whatever was happening now was just the surface. I needed something older, something she forgot existed. It took me 3 days to remember the storage box in the hallway closet. The one we hadn't opened since we moved in. Old cables, backup drives, random pieces of a life we stopped organizing once things felt stable. I waited until she left for work. Then I pulled it out, dust along the edges, tape half peeling off the lid. Inside, exactly what I expected. Dead chargers, old laptops, and at the bottom, wrapped in a faded cloth sleeve, a small black external hard drive. I recognized it immediately. We used it years ago, back when Megan still saved everything. Photos, emails, documents. Before everything moved to the cloud. Before things became easier to hide. I plugged into my laptop and waited. For a moment, nothing. Then the folders loaded. Years of our life, frozen in time. Trips, holidays, old apartment leases. Photos from when we still took pictures of dinners instead of eating in silence. I clicked through them slowly, not looking for anything specific yet, just letting the timeline rebuild itself in my head. Then I saw a folder I didn't remember. Archive_D. Locked. That was enough. I bypassed it in less than 5 minutes. The password wasn't creative, just a variation of something she used everywhere back then. Inside were email exports. Hundreds of them. Time-stamped from before we got married. Before I ever had a reason to doubt her. I opened one at random. Then another. Then I stopped, because the name kept repeating. Daniel H., her former supervisor. The one she used to complain about. The one she said was too controlling, too intense. The reason she quit that job. The emails didn't read like complaints. They read like something else entirely. Private jokes, late-night messages, hotel confirmations buried between work threads, photos attached, some deleted, some partially recovered, just enough to understand context without needing everything. I leaned back in a chair and stared at the screen. The timestamps didn't lie. This wasn't a recent shift in her behavior. This was a pattern, refined over years. Different man. Same structure, secrecy, control, dual versions of herself depending on who was looking. I scrolled further until I found one message that didn't fit the others. Short, direct, from him. You said he wouldn't find out. No reply saved after that. I sat there in the quiet of the house, the hum of the laptop the only sound, and felt everything align. Not anger, not shock, clarity. What I thought started weeks ago had started long, before I was even paying attention, maybe even before I thought I knew her at all. I closed the laptop slowly, disconnected the drive, and placed it back in the box exactly where I found it, because now I understood something important. I wasn't dealing with a mistake. I was dealing with someone who had been practicing this for years. I didn't confront Megan, not after the hard drive, not after the emails, because that kind of information changes the rules. If I said something too early, she would adapt, adjust, delete, deny. She'd done it before. I'd seen enough to know that. So instead, I reached backward. It took me less than 10 minutes to find him. Daniel H. had moved companies twice since those emails. New title, new office, same city, same polished online presence, professional headshot, controlled smile, carefully written bio. He looked exactly like the kind of man who thought he'd buried his past. I sent a single message. No emotion, no accusations. Just, we need to talk about Megan. He responded in under an hour. That told me everything. We met the next evening at a quiet bar on the edge of downtown. The kind of place where conversation stayed at the table and nobody paid attention unless you made them. He was already there when I arrived. Older than his photo suggested. Tired around the eyes. Suit jacket off. Sleeves rolled up like he'd been sitting there for a while. Waiting. I took the seat across from him. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. He studied my face like he was trying to place exactly how much I knew. I didn't help him. I assume you've seen something, he said finally. Enough, I replied. That was all it took. He leaned back slightly, exhaled, and gave a short, humorless smile. Then you're already ahead of where I was. No denial, no performance, just acceptance. I let the silence stretch again. He filled it this time. She told me you were stable, he said, predictable, easy to manage. The words didn't land the way they should have, because I was already expecting them. I'm not here for that, I said. I want to understand the pattern. That made him pause. Not defensive, careful. Then he nodded slowly, like he'd just made a decision. It wasn't just me, he said. I didn't react. She overlaps people, he continued. That's how she keeps control. One for security, one for excitement, sometimes more. Different versions of herself, depending on who she's with. I thought about the rideshare logs, the missing bracelet, the shirt. It fit too cleanly. She told me I was the only one, he added, almost as an afterthought. I believed her for a while. Why did it end? I asked. This time he laughed, quiet, bitter. It didn't end, he said. I just figured it out too late. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice even though no one was listening. She's always 2 steps ahead, he said. By the time you see something, she's already accounted for it. That was the first thing that actually mattered. Not what she did, how she did it. I watched him for a second longer, measuring whether there was anything else hidden behind what he'd said. There wasn't. Just someone who had already lost a game I had just realized I was playing. I stood up. That's all I needed, I said. He nodded like he understood exactly what that meant. As I walked out into the cold air, one thought settled in, precise and controlled. This wasn't about catching her anymore. It was about moving faster than she expected. I didn't follow her anymore after that. Physical tracking was too obvious, too slow. Megan operated in layers. What she showed, what she hid, and what she assumed no one would ever think to check. So I called Ethan, my cousin, cybersecurity analyst, the kind of person who didn't ask unnecessary questions, only the right ones. We met at his apartment 2 nights later. Minimal furniture, 3 monitors glowing in the dark, half-empty energy drink on the desk. He looked at me once, then at the folder I placed in front of him. Personal or legal? He asked. Both, I said. That was enough. He didn't ask about Megan. Didn't ask what she did. Just started working. Give me access points, he said. I handed him everything I had without hesitation. Shared accounts, old passwords, email backups, device names. Things Megan assumed I'd never use against her, because I never had before. That was her mistake. Ethan worked in silence for nearly 20 minutes. Just the sound of keys, occasional clicks, screens shifting from one dataset to another. Then he leaned back slightly. She's careful, he said. I expected that, but not perfect. That's all I needed to hear. He turned one of the monitors toward me. Start here. A list of apps appeared. Not the obvious ones. Those were clean, normal, boring. These were hidden, disguised icons, renamed interfaces, secure messaging platforms designed to look like calculators, note apps, even a budgeting tool. She rotates them, he said, deletes, reinstalls, switches accounts, keeps everything compartmentalized. My eyes moved across the screen, absorbing it, not chaotic, structured, multiple identities. Ethan continued. Different emails tied to different services. None of them cross-link in obvious ways. He clicked again. Another screen. Ride history. But not just one account. 3. Different names. Slight variations. Same phone. Pickup locations spread across the city. Drop-offs near hotels, apartments, private addresses. Patterns repeating every few days. But never in a way that would look obvious unless you overlaid them. Ethan overlaid them. That's when it became clear. This one's consistent, he said, pointing to a cluster. Same hotel chain. Same time window. Tuesdays and Fridays mostly. Routine. Predictable once you knew where to look. Then he opened something else. Hotel bookings. Not in her name. Temporary emails. Prepaid cards. Short stays, 2 to 4 hours, rarely overnight. Efficient. Controlled. Whoever she learned this from, Ethan said, they knew what they were doing. I thought about Daniel, and how he said she overlapped people. She improved it. I replied. Ethan glanced at me, then nodded slightly. Yeah, he said. Looks like it. He leaned forward again, typing faster now. There's more, he added, but you need to decide something first. What? He stopped and looked directly at me. You trying to catch her or end this? I didn't answer immediately, because for the first time, the scale of it wasn't abstract anymore. It was mapped, measured, repeatable. I looked at the screen, at the names, the timestamps, the precision of it all, and felt that same quiet settling again. Not anger, not hesitation. Decision. I'm not catching anything, I said. Ethan nodded once and turned back to the keyboard. Good, he said, because if you were, you're already late. I watched the data unfold across the screen, every hidden piece of her life lining up into something clear and undeniable. And for the first time, I wasn't reacting to her moves. I was ahead of them. I didn't change anything overnight. That would have been a mistake. Megan noticed sudden shifts. That's how she stayed ahead. She watched for reactions, emotional spikes, behavioral changes, anything that broke routine. So I kept everything exactly the same. Same mornings, same conversations, same quiet dinners where she scrolled through her phone, and I asked just enough questions to sound present. But underneath that, everything started moving, slowly, precisely. The first thing I did was separate what mattered: joint accounts, shared savings, investment portfolios, insurance policies, property records. On paper, it all looked balanced. In reality, it wasn't. I scheduled a meeting with an attorney 3 towns over. Not our usual one. Someone Megan had never heard of, never interacted with, and would never think to check. No digital trail tied back to our home. No overlap. The office was quiet, minimal, neutral. I laid everything out without emotion. Assets, timeline, evidence, patterns. He didn't interrupt. Just took notes, occasionally asking for clarification on numbers, ownership structures, dates. When I finished, he leaned back and looked at me carefully. You're not reacting, he said. No, I replied. He nodded. Good, he said. That gives you options. Options. That was the only thing that mattered. Over the next week, we restructured everything. Not aggressively. Quietly. A new account was opened in my name only, routed through a different institution. Small transfers at first, amounts that wouldn't trigger alerts or draw attention. Then larger ones, spaced out, justified under normal expenses, investments, routine movements. Invisible if you weren't looking directly at them. Insurance policies were updated next. Beneficiaries adjusted. Clauses revised. Documentation redirected to a private address. Then the property. That was the most important piece. The house wasn't just where we lived. It was leverage, stability, the illusion of permanence Megan relied on. So I removed it, legally, cleanly. A trust was established under my name. Ownership transferred through it, layered in a way that didn't change anything on the surface. Same address, same keys, same routines. But on paper, it was no longer hers. Not even partially. Every step was documented, filed, locked in place. By the time it was done, the structure of our life looked identical from the outside, but the foundation was completely different. One evening, Megan sat across from me at the kitchen table, sipping wine, her phone resting beside her. "You've been quiet lately," she said. I looked at her for a moment, then shrugged slightly. "Work," I replied. She studied me, searching for something, a crack, a shift, any sign that I knew. There was nothing for her to find, because this wasn't about confrontation anymore. It was about positioning. She smiled faintly, satisfied enough, and went back to her phone. That was the third thing I noticed. Confidence. She still believed she was in control. Still believed I was exactly where she left me. Predictable, stable, easy to manage. I let her believe that, because by the time she realized anything had changed, there would be nothing left for her to control. I didn't confront Megan. Not yet. Instead, I started introducing friction. Small things at first. Harmless on the surface. Easy to dismiss, until they started stacking in her head. The first was a receipt. I left it on the kitchen counter, right next to her coffee mug. Plain, folded once, nothing dramatic. It was from a hotel, the one Ethan flagged as her most consistent location. Timestamp, Tuesday, 11:42 p.m. She saw it immediately. Her hand paused midair as she reached for a cup, just for a second. Then she picked it up, unfolded it casually like it didn't matter. "Did you go downtown?" she asked, too neutral. I didn't look up from my phone. "Yeah, late meeting ran long." A lie, but a controlled one. She nodded slowly, eyes still on the receipt, processing something she couldn't quite place, because the time matched, but the context didn't. That was the point. Over the next few days, I repeated it. A calendar on the wall, something we hadn't used in years, suddenly had markings, small, precise circles around random dates. Dates that weren't random. Her dates. She noticed by the third one. "What's this?" she asked, pointing at Friday. I glanced at it like I had to think. "Deadlines," I said, trying to stay organized. She didn't respond. But later that night, I saw her standing in front of it again, arms crossed, staring at those circles like they were trying to tell her something. That was when it started, the hesitation. She began checking her phone more often, but now with tension, not comfort. Conversations shorter, movements slightly off rhythm. She started asking questions she normally wouldn't. "Who were you talking to? Why were you out late yesterday? Did you move my things?" Not accusations, probes. She was trying to measure what I knew. I gave her nothing. Just enough answers to keep things normal. Never defensive, never curious. Just steady. Meanwhile, I expanded outward. Laura answered my message 2 days later. Wife of one of the names Ethan pulled from the booking patterns. We met in a quiet cafe, far enough from anywhere familiar. She walked in already knowing. I could see it in her posture, tight shoulders, controlled breathing, eyes that had already processed something she couldn't unsee. "You have proof," she said, sitting down. It wasn't a question. I slid a folder across the table. Not everything, just enough. She didn't react immediately, just looked, slowly, methodically, the way people do when they're trying not to break in public. "He told me I was paranoid," she said quietly. I nodded. "They always do." She closed the folder and exhaled. "What do you want?" she asked. "Alignment," I said. That made her look up. "No drama," I continued. "No early moves. Just timing." She studied me for a moment, then gave a small, sharp nod. "Okay," she said. Back home that night, Megan was different. Subtle, but different. She watched me more. Paused before speaking. Checked the room like something invisible had shifted. At one point, she asked, almost casually, "Is there something you want to tell me?" I looked at her, held eye contact just long enough, then shook my head. No, she didn't believe me. And that was exactly where I needed her, because uncertainty is louder than truth. And now, for the first time, she was the one trying to figure me out. Megan left Friday morning with a suitcase. Not large, just enough to sell the story. Team retreat, she said, adjusting the strap on her shoulder. Probably no signal half the time. I nodded, standing in the doorway like I always did when she left. Have fun, I said. She smiled. Light, easy, confident, like she was walking out of something she controlled. I watched her drive away until her car disappeared at the end of the street. Then I went back inside and closed the door. Everything after that moved fast, not rushed, precise. The paperwork had already been filed days earlier. The trust structure finalized. The buyer lined up, cash, no complications, no delays. All that was left was execution. By noon, the house wasn't mine in the way it used to be, and it definitely wasn't hers. A moving company arrived at 2 p.m. Professional, efficient, silent. I walked them through exactly what needed to be packed. Not everything, just hers. Clothes, shoes, jewelry, personal items. Anything tied directly to her. They worked room by room while I sat at the kitchen table, reviewing the final confirmation emails. Ownership transfer complete. Funds received. Legal closure. Clean. Irreversible. By early evening, her life was reduced to sealed boxes stacked neatly in the garage. Labeled. Organized. Disconnected. I walked through the house one last time that night. Same walls. Same furniture. Same quiet. But it felt different. Lighter. Not empty. Just resolved. Saturday morning, I handed over the keys. No ceremony. No hesitation. Just a signature and a brief exchange of words with someone who had no idea what the house used to be, or what had just ended inside it. By the time Megan's car turned into the driveway Sunday afternoon, it wasn't her driveway anymore. She stepped out, sunglasses on, phone in hand, already typing something as she walked up to the front door. Routine. Unaware. She reached for her key card, tapped it. Nothing. She frowned slightly and tried again. A pause. Then a third time. Slower. Still nothing. That's when she looked up. Really looked. The small details hit first. The absence of her car in the garage. The unfamiliar vehicle parked across the street. The stillness of a place that no longer recognized her. Her phone buzzed. She glanced down. A message. From me. No explanation. Just an address. And beneath it, your things are in the garage. You no longer live here. She stared at the screen longer than she should have, then back at the door, then at the house. For the first time since 3:17 a.m., she didn't look in control. She looked lost. Behind the door, everything was already gone, not just her belongings, her access, her position, her assumption that she had time. Because while she was away playing a role, she thought I didn't understand. I had already closed the entire stage and sold it. The cabin sat at the edge of the lake, far enough from the main road that you couldn't hear traffic, just water, wind, and the occasional creak of it settling. Quiet, controlled. Megan arrived 20 minutes late. I watched her through the window as she stepped out of the car, slower this time. No confidence, no phone in her hand, just hesitation. Good. Inside, everything was already set. Not dramatic, structured, a long table, 3 chairs, a laptop connected to a screen, folders placed neatly in front of each seat. Laura sat across from me, calm, composed, hands folded, no visible emotion. But I could tell she had already crossed a line from shock into something sharper, understanding. The door opened. Megan stepped in. Her eyes moved quickly. Me, Laura, the table, the screen. Processing, calculating. What is this? She asked. No greeting, no performance, just tension. I didn't answer. Laura did. Sit down. Megan looked at her, confused for half a second. Then something clicked. Recognition, not of Laura herself, but of what she represented. Connections, overlap, exactly the things she thought she controlled. Slowly, Megan sat. I opened the laptop. The screen lit up. At first, nothing obvious. Just timestamps, dates, locations. Then the first clip played. Hotel hallway footage. Megan stepping out of an elevator, adjusting her hair, looking directly at the camera, Without realizing it was recording, her face didn't change. Not yet. The second clip, a different location, different night, same pattern. Then audio, fragments of conversations, messages, confirmations, layer after layer. Laura leaned forward slightly and spoke without raising her voice. "He thought I was paranoid," she said. "You told him that, didn't you?" Megan's eyes flicked to her. Still silent, still calculating. I clicked again. Financial records appeared. Prepaid cards, transfers, small withdrawals over time. Then a document, printed, signed. A plan, not detailed, but clear enough. 2 names, Megan and one of the men Ethan identified. A structure for accessing joint funds. Gradual, unnoticeable, until it wasn't. Megan's hand moved slightly on the table. That was the first crack. "You went through my things," she said. Finally, not denial, not shock, just accusation. I leaned back in my chair. "No," I said calmly. I understood them. Silence. Heavy. Controlled. Laura spoke again. "You weren't just cheating," she said. "You were planning." That landed. Not emotionally. Strategically. Because now the room was about betrayal. It was about exposure. Megan looked between us. Slower this time. Less certainty. More calculation. "You don't have context," she said. There it was. The first attempt to regain control. I slid one last folder across the table. She didn't open it immediately, but she knew. Because for the first time since I'd known her, she wasn't ahead anymore. She was catching up, and everything she built was already laid out in front of her, organized, measured, and completely out of her control. Megan didn't open the folder right away. She stared at it like it might disappear if she waited long enough. It didn't. "Go ahead," I said. My voice was calm, flat, the same tone I'd used for weeks. She finally reached for it. Slow, controlled, but her fingers weren't steady anymore. Inside were legal documents. Clean, final, filed days ago. Divorce filings, asset separation, account closures, signatures already in place. Mine, not hers. Her eyes moved faster as she read, skipping lines, going back, trying to find something she could use. A gap, a mistake. There wasn't one. "You did this already," she said quietly. Not a question. I nodded once. Before the receipt, I added. Before the calendar. That made her look up, really look at me. For the first time, she wasn't analyzing the situation. She was trying to understand how far behind she was. "You knew," she said. I didn't answer immediately, because the truth wasn't about knowing. It was about when. "I knew enough," I said. Silence filled the room again. Not tense. Final. Laura stood up slowly, gathering her folder. "I've already filed," she said, looking at Megan. "And everything you found? My lawyer has it too." Megan didn't respond. She couldn't, because this wasn't one problem anymore. It was multiple, collapsing at the same time. "The account you plan to access?" I continued. "They've been empty for a week." That landed harder than anything else. Her posture changed. Subtle, but real. "You moved it," she said. "Yes." "Where?" "That's not your concern anymore." Her jaw tightened. There it was. The first real emotion. Not guilt, not regret, loss of control. "You think this is over?" she asked. I looked at her for a long second, then shook my head slightly. "No," I said. "It's finished. There's a difference." She knew it. I stood up, sliding the chair back slowly. No rush, no anger, nothing left to prove. "You built everything on timing," I said, "on staying ahead." I stepped back from the table. "And you got comfortable." Her eyes stayed locked on me, searching, still trying to find an angle. "There isn't one," I said before she could speak. That was the last move. Not loud, not dramatic, just accurate. Laura walked out first. I followed a moment later, stopping at the door just long enough to look back. Megan was still sitting there, folder open, hands resting on the table, completely still, not because she was calm, because there was nothing left to do. Outside, the air was cold, clean. I took a breath and walked toward the car without looking back again. Because the truth was simple. She didn't lose because I was smarter. She lost because I stopped playing her game and started ending it quietly, completely, and without giving her a single chance to recover.